What is up, everyone? Crunchy Frog here, and today we finally got the much anticipated Call of Duty Next presentation, which, if you don't know, is basically a several hour long kind of conference slash expo of sorts, wherein they unveil pretty much every detail that you need to know about the upcoming Call of Duty. It's happened several times over the years, and this year, obviously, they are showcasing this fall's Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So basically, what we're going to do in this video is I have watched the entirety of Call of Duty Next and taking notes on it and everything like that, my thoughts on it, everything you guys need to know to stay up to speed on the new Call of Duty Black Ops game that's coming out. And I'm just going to basically go through and break it all down for you and make it a little more concise so you don't have to sit there and, sit through 4 hours of conference like I did. We're going to cover all the main points. I'll give my thoughts on some of the things and, basically give you everything, a condensed view of the information presented today that we learned about. I'll be trying to flash up some pictures along the way and maybe some gameplay in the background if I can find some that I'm allowed to use. That way you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about and, get to see the various things as well. Now, I will say that this video will only cover the multiplayer, and I will be covering or making a second video going over everything they unveil for the zombies portion of the game. I will not be making a video, at least as of the recording of this one, for the Warzone portion, since, as you know, we don't really cover that on this channel. I'm not a Warzone player. A lot of my fan base is not either, so we're just going to skip that. So we'll get 2 videos out for you here on consecutive days that will kind of break down and give you all of the main bullet points that you need to know from this year's CoD NEXT event. So, as always, if you like content like this, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you would like to stay up to date with all of the latest Call of Duty news, as well as X-Defiant news, gaming reviews, gaming video essays, and everything like that here on the channel. If you would like to support the channel monetarily and get early access to video, as well as some super cool emotes for the comment section, make sure to hit the join button. I appreciate each and every one of you. So, with that all out of the way, let's get right into, what was unveiled today. What did we see? So first, I'm just going to give you a rundown of every bit of news. Basically, the format that they had is they would have like a little panel at the desk, kind of like a talk show or a news show, right, where they would interview members of the development team, give us some news, and then they would cut over to almost like esports commentary or codcasting, so to speak, where they watched the 215 content creators that they flew out there kind of play the game, and they would cut between the different players and everything like that. So we'll just cover everything that they talked about in those little news segments, since I know that's what everyone cares about. And then later I can give you some thoughts on the gameplay that I saw and stuff like that. But yeah, the very first thing that they mentioned and went over was that the beta is starting this weekend. So starting August 30th, which as of the recording of this is 2 days. By the time you guys see the video, it'll be, the next day. So starting for early access, if you pre-ordered, I think the Vault Edition, if you have Game Pass, you can start playing this weekend, and then the open beta is the following weekend. So that's pretty cool. Game Pass members like myself, we get that early access to play an extra weekend. So as you know, I'll be downloading this to give you guys some thoughts as well, so stay tuned for that. You can also preload it, so you do not have to wait and install it the day whenever you get home from work. Matter of fact, tonight I'm probably going to try to get that preloaded so I can hop on Friday after the gym and get that going. So then they moved on to the next big thing they covered was the maps. Now there's a list of maps. I'll probably throw the screenshot up on screen. There is 16 maps. I'm not going to sit here and list all of them. Again, you can kind of see it in front of your face here. And we'll get to play 8 of those in beta. So the 16, now originally whenever they said 16 maps, I thought that was just 16 on launch, kind of like we saw with the original Modern Warfare 2 and what we saw with Modern Warfare 3, which was essentially the same maps. All 6v6, everything like that. Well, it turns out that it is a mix. That 16 comprises of some of the typical 6v6 maps, and then also some arena or what do they call it? Basically the smaller maps, right? The 2v2 kind of gunfight style maps. So keep in mind, this is not 16 6v6 maps on launch. It is kind of a combination of the both of them. I don't think they give a breakdown number-wise, but in the beta, out of the 8 that we get, 5 or 6v6 and 3 are arena. So I would assume probably a similar ratio for launch, and maybe 10 6v6 and 6 arena, or maybe 12 and 4, something like that. Either way, they will not all be 6v6. And of course, on the 2v2 3v3 style maps, there's different game modes that you can play. Gunfight, stuff like that, face off, and there will not be score streaks on those for obvious reasons. They did say that they are sticking to 3-lane design for a lot of their maps, and they really were focusing on the small and medium maps, so it doesn't sound like there's going to be any monstrously large maps, no derail type situations or Gustav Cannon type things here in this game. And they focused a lot on traveling the world, getting very diverse and interesting locales, as opposed to just all the same black and gray and brown maps that we've seen in some of the more recent CoD titles. They then jumped over to what modes to expect, and the first thing they did was highlight the kill order game mode, which is essentially a high value target mode, which means obviously one person on each team is kind of picked to be the high value target. You get more points for killing them. They get more points when they get killed, stuff like that. It sounded kind of like a team deathmatch otherwise, but obviously with the high value target thrown in, the high value targets also get buffs, right? They get more armor, they get certain cool perks, stuff like that, to keep them alive a little bit longer than the average person. Now, in my opinion, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because your team's kind of performance is solely based on how good your high value target is. And since it's randomly picked, if the worst person on your team gets the high value target, you're kind of at the mercy of RNG. So we'll have to see how this plays out. It's an interesting game mode. I can't say that I'm super thrilled about it or that I'll be playing it too much, but it is interesting to see, and something new and innovative that other games have done, but I don't believe CoD has in the past. They also mentioned that obviously, like we talked about in a previous video, they are moving to zones for domination, not just the little flag circles. And in Hardpoint, and this is a really cool change, they have now added numbers to the location. So instead of it just going to the docks, it is going to rotation number 1, right? And then rotation 2, 3, the whole way down. So that way you can start familiarizing yourselves with the rotation. You can call out the hard points by their number. You can kind of know where you're at in a rotation, and overall just be more clued in, and things will be a little less random and a little more planned out and strategic. They then moved on to talking about the live seasons. They did confirm that more maps obviously are coming after launch, including returning maps. So we will not just be getting brand new maps, but also remasters or reimaginings, stuff like that. They also kind of alluded to Nuketown several times by saying, some of these maps would be, the game wouldn't be a Black Ops game without these. I'm assuming they're talking about Nuketown there. It just stands to reason. And so yeah, that was basically it for the live seasons. They didn't go into too many details. They didn't say how many seasons or anything like that. Obviously battle passes, stuff like that, return. Basically the same model we've been going with, and we can expect some remastered maps. Next up, they highlighted the intelligent movement, which, of course, during this entire thing, they've talked about Omni movement about 787,000 times, and that's probably being generous. It's probably closer to 1 trillion, because that's really what they're selling the game on. That's their big pitch. That's, they can't go 2 sentences without talking about Omni movement, but intelligent movement is kind of sprinkled in on top of that, and basically that's the thing that they showed in the original reveal, where you can kind of remove inputs by the game doing stuff automatically for you. If you move towards a wall, it'll auto jump, it'll auto tactical sprint, it'll do different thing like that. Again, their aim is just to reduce the amount of button presses you have, make it a little bit easier for others to also move around the maps efficiently, without having to press too many buttons or, have the learning curve be too steep. So we'll see how this works. They do have a training course in the beta, so you can kind of get used to it, see if you want to use it, see if it's not for you. I'm betting it's not for me. I never like when games do like the auto jump. I even turned auto jump off in Minecraft, so I probably won't be using this, but it is interesting, especially maybe for those that have a disability or they don't want to blow their controllers out after a month of this tedious Omni movement system that they've added. You can use something like this to maybe reduce your input count. Next up, they talked about operators and basically described that the two factions, one side is the rogue Black Ops operators that have kind of gone against the government and whatever, and then the other side obviously is I forget what they said, Crimson something or other, I believe, and they have the government on their side. They're hunting the Black Ops members. So at the very least, I was glad to see they threw in a little bit of lore, even though it maybe doesn't match the previous immersion levels of having those really distinct factions to play as. At the very least, they give it maybe some thought, more than we can say for the last 4 or 5 years. They then went on to discuss weapons and gunsmith. And the first thing they talked about, obviously, there is a dedicated knife slot. So now you have your primary, your secondary, and a melee, and you could choose to run around with just your melee out. So that helps things along and definitely makes it so that everyone can use a knife only if they want to, especially in certain circumstances, instead of changing your loadout. They did say that in their selection of weapons, there will be a lot of prototype weapons, and there will be 12 brand new to Call of Duty weapons. So, obviously, as we get later into the years and we've rehashed so many different games and settings and everything like that, we start getting to a point to where, how many new guns can you add? Well, at launch, there's already 12 brand new ones, and then obviously returning weapons that you've used and you've loved in previous Call of Duty titles as well. They did confirm that Gunfight is returning again on those maps, like we talked about. The Gunsmith is returning. All of that is the same. They did say that attachments are now weapon specific, so you can't just unlock an attachment and use it on any weapon, etc., and collect the 3,000 attachments like we've had in the last couple of games. But then now they are weapon specific, but the optics are not. So they are shared within your class. And they use the example of, if you unlock like a red dot sight on one assault rifle, the moment you start leveling up your AK-47, you can already use a red dot sight on it from the rip. So that's pretty cool. I enjoyed that portion because I hate most iron sights in the game. There's always like 2 or 3 weapons over the course of an entire game that I actually enjoy the iron sights on. So this is really nice to be able to get those optics nice and early. They did say that there's less cons or less negative aspects on attachments, right? We've talked about in the past how the attachments seem to have 3 or 4 good things about them. They increase, your ADS speed, but then there's like 4 or 5 cons to every single attachment, right? Nothing felt like a net positive. And they've toned that down in this game, as well as making the benefits more easily noticeable. So it's a little more easier to navigate. If you want faster ADS speed, the path to that is a lot more, noticeable, a lot more kind of, recognizable for the average player. It doesn't take insane number crunching to figure out what weapon attachments would probably work better to get you, less recoil or quicker ADS speed, stuff like that. They did go on to say that there is a slightly lower TTK or slightly faster TTK than Cold War. They are going back to 100 health, so I know with Modern Warfare 3 we had the 150 and blah blah blah, but they are back down to 100 health for this game. They said they tested other values, but just felt that 100 felt the best. But they are willing to change or update and nerf and buff certain things based on feedback and stuff like that, especially from the beta. So we'll have to get in there, play, and see how it feels. Is the TTK too fast? Does it almost feel like hardcore? Is it too long and it's frustrating just to get a single kill? Stuff like that. We'll talk about this later in my impressions section of the video, but it seemed kind of fast from what I watched, so it could be a very good thing. I like quicker TTK games overall, so this could be a good thing for me, my enjoyment personally. They did say that their TTK was also designed with Omni movement in mind, to take into account how fast everyone's going to be zipping around the map and diving and sliding and all that. So they wanted to keep the TTK relatively low so that you can still get kills, without people diving and sprinting away and sliding away and all that type of stuff. They then went on to describe the camos, and while they didn't go into any deep detail on the individual challenges that we'll have to get, they didn't mention how many long shots we're going to have to get or anything like that. They did say that reticle challenges and customization is back, which, as you remember, was a feature in previous games where if you got 25 headshots or whatever while looking down the sights of a specific reticle, you got a different color reticle or a different shape in there. So that all was coming back. Very Black Opsy. Glad to see that back, and another kind of sense of progression that they've added to the game that I think never should have left COD, and I'm super happy to see it back. They did then go into the 4 mastery camos. Now, I will say up front, there are also zombie mastery camos like there have been in a couple of the past games. We will not cover those here since I'll be covering those over in my zombie video tomorrow. But for today, the 4 mastery camos they showed off, and again, I'll probably try to get them on the screen for you, are gold, diamond, dark spine, and dark matter. So again, we're going with the 4 mastery. I'm assuming it's going, they didn't say anything, but I'm assuming it's going to follow the same rules as this year. Gold is, for that specific weapon. Diamond is for the weapon class. Dark spine is something that you can unlock on each weapon, but you have to have diamond for everything. And then dark matter is, what you get after you get dark spine on everything. I'm assuming. Again, this just follows the same pattern as the last few years. Maybe they have something completely different in mind. We'll have to see either in the beta or maybe closer to launch or something like that. Maybe they'll put out more detailed system notes on that so that we could see exactly how we will be able to unlock dark matter. And once again, there are zombie ones as well, so that'll give you some incentive to play zombies. But again, we'll cover all of those and list those all out in the zombie video tomorrow. Next up, they went into great detail on the new Classic Prestige system, which is a system that myself and many others are super happy to see. They obviously started out by saying it is, 1 through 55, so 55 levels like the last, however many Call of Duties, and that's where you unlock the content, right? The guns, the perks, the not the attachments, the your equipment and field upgrades and stuff like that from level 1 to 55. Once you hit max level, you are given the choice to prestige, right? Just like the old games, right? You get to 55, you'll probably have to level up again to basically 56, and a message will appear on your screen. Do you want to prestige? Set yourself back to level 1, get some cool new perks, and do it all again, which is a great system. I loved it in the old CODs. I've hated the recent, well, I haven't hated, it just hasn't been as great recently. The kind of infinite level system that they've had in the last couple of games. So I'm super happy to see this back. And then obviously as you start back at level 1, you have to unlock everything again. Now you will get permanent unlock tokens as you prestige. So think back to like Black Ops 2 days, stuff like that. So that you don't have to unlock everything every prestige. I'm assuming 1 or 2 items per prestige. And you get that token, and so you never have to level up. Say you really like a gun that you get ordinarily at like level 47, now you just get it at level 1 every time. Once you get created class, probably at level 4 usually, you have that weapon right off the rip. So you don't have to wait till level 47 every prestige to get it. Same with perks, stuff like that. Really helps if you're really tied to a specific weapon or a specific perk. Now this will obviously make weapon grinding and camo grinding a little rough because you have to you have to balance that. Do I want a prestige and kind of everything that comes along with that, or do I want to get every gun gold? So that's going to be an interesting toss-up. They didn't really talk about that, but that is something that just kind of sprang to my mind as I'm recording this video. Interesting to see how people weigh the pros and cons of that. Now, there are 10 prestiges like classic CODs. So again, you reset your level essentially 10 times for, roughly 560 levels, give or take there. And then the master prestige after that goes up to level 1000. Now, they showed off just the first prestige icon, which I'll show on screen for you, and it is badass. And they kind of went into detail why it looks like that and everything. And each prestige kind of has a theme, right? They said that was very reminiscent, obviously, of World at War Zombies and stuff. So they did go on to say that each prestige has a theme of a game in Blop's history, and that kind of ties in with the skins and blueprints and charms and more rewards that you get with each prestige. I'm assuming they're all themed, so maybe prestige 1 you get that tied to that specific theme. Maybe prestige 7 is Black Ops 2 themed, and you get Black Ops 2 type cosmetics, stuff like that. We'll have to see. They didn't go into too much detail, but yeah, each prestige has a theme, and it's all centered around Black Ops history. There's also 100%er calling cards and challenges, which I know guys like Nero and other YouTubers have talked to death. Guys like that grind and try to get every challenge and bust their ass to get all that stuff. There is actually calling cards and, some incentive to do so on these. So that was really cool to see. And they also stated that there will be Dark Ops challenges, which will be hidden, right? They're not out in the open telling you how to get it. They're very difficult, and the team is going to give no hints. So these are kind of the secret achievements, so to speak, for the game, right? Where, maybe you need to get 10,000 headshots and that's the challenge, right? That you get a secret calling card, stuff like that. So that's really cool. I know that was in past Black Ops games. Super cool to see them bring it back. Now, they also said that in this prestige system, kind of like Black Ops 2, your weapon progression stays. So the good thing about that is even if you have to wait till, level 32 to get a weapon, once you level up to 32, you get the weapon back just in the state you left it in the last prestige. Whatever weapon level you had it at, whatever progress or anything like that towards your mastery challenges, that will all still be there whenever you re-unlock the game. So you don't have to worry about that. And then challenge progress obviously stays as well. So the only thing you're resetting essentially with this prestige system is unlocking of everything again, unlocking your weapons, your perks, your equipment, and field upgrades, stuff like that. Now they did show, and they showcased it in gameplay as well. Medals are back, if you remember those from kind of the classic CODs. So instead of just a little, bar underneath your kill XP count saying that you got a headshot, you'll actually have a medal up at the top for a headshot. And usually if this follows the system of past games, you can actually go in and count how many times you've done that. So how many times have you gotten a Fury kill, and how many times have you gotten a turned on medal for, killing someone that started shooting you first, different things like that. So that's super cool. It adds kind of to that dopamine cycle that COD really thrives on. Even just watching the gameplay, I was super pumped to see those coming up and seeing your weapon level up and then seeing those medals come up on screen. Like, it is literally scientifically built to just turn on your dopamine receptors at all times while you're playing the game. And that's nothing new for COD, but I'm a sucker for it anyways. I'm going to say I really enjoyed it. And then finally, they talked a little bit about ranked mode. They didn't go into too much detail. They just said it was, quote, the definitive ranked play experience. They've been working on it for how many years? Treyarch usually does the ranked play for all of these games in the past. Even when they didn't develop the core game, they do the ranked mode for it. So I have faith that it'll be a somewhat decent ranked play experience there, especially since they seem very confident that what they've crafted here is the best one they've done yet. And it'll arrive earlier than ever with Season 1. So it sounds like already out the gate when Season 1 arrives, we can already jump right into ranked mode, which is pretty cool. I'll probably give it a try once or twice, especially if I have a group of friends to play with. So that about wraps up all of the information that they covered. So now I want to give my impressions on not only the gameplay that I saw, but also the CoD NEXT as a whole. Now again, as of the recording this video, I only watched the multiplayer segment, so I can only give my thoughts that far. We'll talk about zombies tomorrow. But, first up, there's already a bunch of cosmetics, and I know that's like the Vault Edition, right? They had to give the crazy skins to incentivize those pre-orders and spending an extra $30. They kept highlighting them incessantly. Obviously, they kept cutting to gameplay of people using these crazy alien weapons and, weapons with like cooling coils on the side and all these masterwork type looking variants. And it's launch. Now, my stance on all this. I'm probably making another video. I have another script kind of that I'm writing now about how COD has just lost its identity. Everything is these Fortnite type skins and stuff like that. And usually there's a sacred time window right around launch where they pick a theme for the game and they stay true to that theme. It's been literally my respite, my harbor from the storm that is the aggressive monetization of COD for at least the first month or two, or maybe even season or two of these games for the last 5 or 6 years. And now that looks like that's right out the window. Day one, we're going to have these crazy, insane vault modes or vault edition skins. And even in the gameplay they were showing, it was just rampant. And even in all the trailers and stuff like that they kept showing in the gameplay, like even the base skins are kind of over the top, right? There's no cohesive theme with this game. We'll get more into that later, but yeah, it's just kind of something that stuck out to me right away, especially since they kept talking about, oh, look at that super cool weapon. Hey, do you know that's the Vault Edition weapon? It was just ham-fisted at times. A lot of this presentation was ham-fisted, but yeah, not super psyched about seeing that. I will say the kills look very satisfying. We talk about this in all of my Call of Duty reviews every year. That's just something that they have to nail, that some shooter games do not. And it's kind of a combination between the sounds of the hit registration and the hit reg, the hit markers, different things like that. Kind of the little HUD tweaks that they make and the colors they use and the animations that play after you get a kill that just really stroke the brain in the right way to make you feel good about getting kills or dealing damage. You know, it feels satisfying, rewarding. Seemed like that. Obviously, I haven't played the game yet, but just from looking at gameplay, that seemed like very rewarding. They've been doing a great job of that the last few years. Now, I will say, and you guys have probably heard me talk this to death, the movement looks so cancerous. And I know I'm an old head. Call me a shitter in the comments, say I'm bad, say I need to adapt. Believe me, I've heard it all already. You can't say anything I haven't heard yet. This does not look fun to me. I'm kind of a classic Call of Duty player. I like the old style of Call of Duty gameplay. This new frenetic TikTok ADHD crackhead movement and YYing and crazy stuff like this, slide canceling, jumping to the side, especially with this Max Payne style of action hero, you know, diving to the front, to the back, to the side, all this crazy stuff. Just seeing these content creators who are usually people who know how to play the game pretty decently, if not, just outright sweats. It was just, it already looks like it's going to be bad. You're going to get into those engagement optimized matchmaking where if you have one good game, it's going to put you up against similar people that I watched play this game during this event, and they're just going to be Max Payne diving across the floor, and it's going to be frustrating. It's getting further and further away from being a shooter, just a Twitch, shooter where you take high points on the map and it's about map knowledge and controlling the engagement and this, that, and the other thing. All the things that Woody's Gamertag used to make videos out of back in the day, and just turning into who can input the most number of movement inputs on their controller to jump around like a crack addict before they get the kill on you because you physically could not aim where they were jumping in movement. It's getting a bit insane, and this game jumped fully into it. And again, they just would not shut up about the movement for the entirety of this presentation. I will say I also saw that elims return, which I don't know if that's going to affect the KDR. In the past, that's meant that if you've damaged an enemy or killed them, that counted as an elim. So kind of assists are molded in with kills. Don't know how that'll play out. They didn't really talk to that too much. I noticed that the default HUD is very similar to Cold War, including the fonts and the UI elements that come up during the game. Now, obviously, that's highly customizable, so you can make it look however you want, but the default HUD seems pretty similar to Cold War, very clean, very crisp, nothing too crazy or out of the box on that. TTK does seem pretty quick, like we talked about earlier. I think they were not lying. Yeah, they tried to lower it a little bit, make up for how fast everyone moves, so it's not, insanely long and stuff like that. Just long enough for you to maybe be able to make a move and attempt to save your life without it being insane and taking 17 bullets to kill every time you see somebody. The maps also look pretty good and pretty varied in the interest of fairness. There's lots of cool locations. Very, different. One map looks totally different than the next, and we didn't even get to see all of them by any means, so I'm super pumped to see all of them on launch day. So they seem like they did a great job. We'll see how they play from a gameplay standpoint later on. Now, I will say, and again, we touched on this briefly in a couple bullet points ahead, it doesn't give off any 90s vibes. Right, I know that's the whole thing. This is the Gulf War era. This is, during the 90s. This is blah, blah, blah. They had like Clinton and stuff during the trailers and all that stuff. It just doesn't feel like 90s because they've used so many. They're basically going the Fortnite route. Everything feels the same. Like if you would have shown me this gameplay and said that this is just the next season for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, I would have believed you 100%. I would not have questioned it. I would not have asked. I would have just assumed they added a few guns to Modern Warfare 3, and here we were. I would have asked maybe where Ghost was at best. I mean, it doesn't feel, there's no cohesive theme. There's nothing that differentiates it from the past. Before, everyone used to say, oh, COD releases the same game every year. But like, you could kind of correct them and say, okay, gameplay-wise, maybe, but, look, this one's in the near future, and then the next one's in the 1960s, and then, everything like that. The games felt different year in and year out. You bought the game because it at least felt like there was going to be a little bit something different than what you played last year. This just looked, at least from a visual standpoint, identical to everything we've been playing for the last 2 or 3 years. Nothing got me hype. The trailers, everything like that, nothing got me like, oh, dude, I cannot wait to play in the 90s. There's that one map that you play in a strip mall, and that's about that. Like, that was the only time where I felt like, oh, this is like that realistic, like, 90s nostalgia, or, kind of like the map, the mall map was back in Cold War that gave you that 80s, shopping mall nostalgia. It's just all kind of shovelware, right? It's all going to look, especially after season 1 or season 2, and they start releasing, Snoop Dogg skins and LL Cool J skins, who knows what, right? It's just going to be all this conglomeration. None of the guns are going to feel like they're from the 90s. None of the operators are going to seem like they're from the 90s. Nothing. It's just going to be this conglomeration of shit, and it's just going to feel like season 7 or 8 of Modern Warfare 3 when it comes to tonality and theme and visuals. So that's kind of a personal gripe, but just be prepared for that. Nothing feels any different. Much like media as a whole, everything's just moving to one big conglomeration of who knows what, just gray nothingness. Overall, my impressions of CoD Next, rather, I gotta say, guys, it was incredibly cringy. Like, it was very informative, right? I have, a half-hour video giving you guys information about it, but it was extremely cringy. The hosts were not good, especially that Stephanie lady that they've kind of championed. I don't know if I think she's like the community manager or something like that for Treyarch. She's just a cardboard cutout there. No charisma, confused all the time, and that was extremely on display today. Like, it almost kind of hurt. The chat log the entire time was just yelling cringe at everything. And I noticed the YouTube live chat, so, take that with a grain of salt. But they were not wrong. There were so many moments of cringe where I physically winced. Like, physically was like, ooh, as I watched it, because it was uncomfortable. Like, whenever they went to the streamer section where we watch streamers play, they would like switch streamers too quick. You'd watch like 12 seconds of gameplay and they'd switch. The host that they hired to, try to hype everything up and almost COD cast it, or, like MLG cast it, couldn't keep up. They'd start talking about one clip and then it would immediately cut to some other guys. So they'd start talking about a weapon so-and-so was using and their skill set. And then immediately you'd be seeing Jim Bob, with a shotgun. So it was like extremely just awkward. The whole streamer portion just looked bad. I'd rather have them just codcast one specific cohesive match professionally called at a time and then do that for 3 or 4 matches between going back to the news segment. Keep it a little more cohesive, keep a little more, just it was just like ADHD, like flicking between people because they don't think anyone's attention span can handle more than 35 seconds in any given direction. So it was just a bit disjointed, and the host seemed just as confused as I was. And they even had a segment where they tried to like shoehorn in RG3, and he was starting to interview people, but it was so uncomfortable, and he was like locked in playing, and that Lottie girl was like trying to interview him, and he was just giving one word answers because he was trying to concentrate. And then it was like this awkward handoff of, hey, do you want to interview people with me? And he just like stands up awkwardly from the table. It was just very weird, and I wasn't too happy with it. It was just, it felt forced. It felt like they tried to be like, r/fellow kids, right? Too many times, like, hey kids, look who we got. And it just didn't work out. They kept fangirling over Kane Brown, who's a country singer. It was just super forced, super cringy. They also had ad segments. So obviously, I don't mean like ads. They probably had those on Twitch and YouTube as well. But I mean like sponsored segments. So they would like cut away for a minute or two and go over all of their sponsors and stuff like that. So even if you didn't have ads turned on and got like the normal Twitch ads, you still had to sit through their version of ads. It was weird, and I didn't appreciate it too much. I get it, right? This probably cost $1 million to put on. I mean, it was insane. There was 215 creators there, each with 2 PCs, one for streaming, one for actually playing the game. All these ring light setups and all this, like millions and millions of dollars were spent on this, like tens of millions of dollars possibly. But, so I get it. They need, the ad money to compensate. It just felt weird and really commercialized for seemingly no reason. Like I said earlier, the host also just seemed lost, and there was just a lot of dead air or like awkwardness and like awkward silence, or they just rambled and said nonsense because they physically didn't know what they were looking at on screen. They would cut away from things. Like they had a section, and I'll try to wrap this up. I know it's getting a little long, but they had a section where they were going over the maps. And so the commentators, the news desk people started to describe the maps, right? Start to talk about them, their inspiration, the setting, all this stuff. Except for the title cards for the maps literally lasted 12 seconds. So by the time the lady got words out of her mouth, which again, the Stephanie lady was just horrible. By the time she finally got a word out about the first map and she asked one of the developers about it, they had already cut to the second map. And then they were playing catch up, and it was like you could tell they wanted 2 to 3 minutes for all these maps to describe them in detail and give you some information. But the graphics department just threw up like a 12-second loop of the loading screen, and that was it. And that was just like one example of just very disjointed. Everything felt unorganized or unrehearsed. It was very just like fly off the cuff, off the seat of their pants, like F it, we'll do it live type stuff. And the host, I give credit to, I think his name is Golden Boy. He tried really hard to keep things on the rails, but man, the community manager Stephanie just bombed hard. Like, she looked like a deer in headlights for most of it. I would have much rather them just had the nice little segments with the news thing and, cut down on some of the craziness. They tried to turn this into much bigger of an event than it needed to be. But overall, that was just my thoughts on everything we saw during the multiplayer portion of the broadcast. Again, I will be watching the zombies portion tomorrow and giving you guys a breakdown of everything they unveiled for zombies. So keep an eye out for that on the channel. So now I want to hear your thoughts on it. Basically, did you watch CoD NEXT? Have you only watched my video? I know a lot of people said they didn't really want to sit through the live stream. So let me know your thoughts on everything covered, as well as your thoughts on CoD NEXT itself. Did you find it as cringy and weird and uncomfortable as I did? Did you actually enjoy it? Do you enjoy these events overall, especially now that E3 is gone? Let me know down below. And as always, guys, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos on Black Ops 6, X-Defiant, and everything gaming here on the Crunchy Frog channel. Until next time, guys, you have a good one.